Coming up next on This Week in Radio Tech, George Whittam is our guest. He's been on before. He is the engineer to the stars for their voiceover studios, and he's got a ton of new information, plus studio pictures to share, ideas for home studios, and they're applicable to broadcast studios in traditional radio stations as well. So join with us. Check it out. The show coming up. George Whittam on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at Nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone, this one here, see it there, to the light bulb at the top of the tower right behind me there. I'm Kirk Harnack here in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. So glad that you could make it. We've got a wonderful guest on today's show, and it's some terrific topics of interest to anybody who loves audio, and that would be almost all of us. Okay, if you're into RF and RF only, okay, maybe you can tune out, or maybe you can learn something. I don't know. But I intend to learn something. Our guest is George Whittam, and let's just bring him on in. Hey, George, welcome in. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back again. It's always fun to join this side of the world of audio.
When was the last time I saw you? Was it before COVID or during COVID?
Yeah, definitely before, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, George, give us a little elevator talk on what your expertise is. It's an amazing niche, and I'm so glad you found it. But tell us about what George does.
Yeah, I mean, I like many of us in audio, we try on many different hats trying to figure out what fits. I did everything, live remote recording, from live remote recording to radio broadcast on the air in college to remote broadcast engineering for 94 WIP sports radio in Philadelphia, the Eagles football radio network, to studio recording, and I tried everything. Like, I really tried. I even moved to Hollywood in 2004 and tried production sound mixing, boom operating and doing that kind of work, and it was really challenging. All that led to, through different connections and different folks I met along the way, to finding a niche in the voiceover world. When I got the incredibly lucky break, I got a call from an engineer saying, "Hey, would you please go visit this fella? He needs help with his home studio. He keeps calling me. He's got noise and buzz." And I'm like, "Who is it?" He's like, "Don LaFontaine." And I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, you'll know." And that was in, I think, 2005 or 6. And I went to his house and I was like, holy smoke. I don't know who this guy is quite yet, but he's successful. I don't know why I didn't Google him. But anyway, I went to his basement studio. And he had a lot of gear. Everything had been in there over 10 years. So it had this huge Mackie console, and it had stuff that you don't need now. Mm-hmm. But that was what he needed back in the day. He had the Dolby Fax. He had ISDN Zephyr 9202. He had everything. Like, it was decked out, right? Anyway, when he went into the booth and he said, "I got to go do this quick ISDN session." And he pops into the booth and does a spot for the Simpsons movie. And when I heard his voice, in context, doing that trailer, I just was like, oh my gosh, that's who this guy is. And it was not long after that I realized I need to drop everything else, sell my boom operating gear and all that, my multi-track hard disk recorders and all the gear I'd kind of dragged with me from Pennsylvania when I moved here. Liquidated everything and just like, this is what I need to do. And that's how it kind of started. I was like, I have to just work with voiceover people. They need help.
It amazes me. I'm almost speechless that your first customer, your first client in this niche you didn't know existed, but now it's all you do, was Don LaFontaine.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say he's number one. I had a handful before him.
Okay.
But he was the one where I realized that was a turning point where I had to just focus. Yeah. Like, I'd be on set, right, as at sound production mixing, right, on a set, and I'd get a phone call And I'd be like, hey, I'm on a set. And he'd be like, George, I can't figure out how to get this DVD to burn a blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, the AD would be like, you're on a job. Hang up, stop it. And I was like, I can't monkey around with movies anymore. It's time to go all in. And that's when I just went right into the full-time voiceover. But, all my first clients were all top promo voices. Howard, sorry for forgetting. Why am I forgetting his name right now? I've worked with Howard Kogan, whose name is more up top of mind because he is the voice of Jack on Jack FM, right?
Yeah.
That snarky voice. He's been a client of mine for years. And, oh my gosh, my brain, it must be COVID brain. I just got over COVID last week. Hey. The other Howard is like my first client ever, and he's the guy that really started me in the whole world of voiceover.
Well, we're not just going to, just for you, our audience, we're not going to reminisce with George for the whole hour. We're going to have some actual technical information. And we got a whole bunch of studios to look at where George is going to tell us about, what's important, what's not important. And again, this whole niche is just amazing. George, maybe the last time you were on, our good friend Chris Tobin may have been on the show too as a co-host. Chris passed away just before COVID came along. But Chris also did some voiceover studios for people mostly in the Northeast, in the New York City area. So he's been in help people correct problems like you've done, build new studios like you've done way up in the New York area. But hey, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors right now, and that would be Nautel. Nautel is one of our sponsors, and they make fantastic AM transmitters, FM transmitters, and something we haven't talked about much, and that is Nautel's HD radio offerings. A lot of stations implemented HD radio in the early days of HD radio, and then it seemed to me that there was a bit of a lull. Well, now so many FM broadcasters have implemented FM translators, and the legal way for commercial FM broadcasters to feed an FM translator is with an HD radio signal, like an HD2 or an HD3, and that's the legal way to make that happen. Well, so many broadcasters are taking advantage of that HD radio installations, from what I can see, are back on the rise again, and Nautel has not been asleep at the wheel. They have been coming up with new products to help make that happen. In fact, at a couple of my stations, one in Mississippi, one in American Samoa, we are implementing HD radio for the purpose of feeding a translator. I got to tell you, in Samoa, not much happening in HD car radios there. A lot of their cars actually come from New Zealand and Western Samoa. So, but in Mississippi, we're going to be feeding a translator with it, and certainly there'll be plenty of cars that can get it too. Although a lot of those folks don't know it yet. I think we'll be the first HD in the market. Anyway. HD radio implementation from Nautel is a cinch, and it really, really works well. Well, their HD Multicast Plus product is amazing. It's the importer, the exporter in one box. You can use it as an importer, you can use it as an exporter, or you can do both at the same time. And it's got this famous IP connection from your studio out to the transmitter side to carry these HD signals. Even better, Nautel makes this easy because they give you a lot of learning available right on their website. You can learn about increasing your HD power if you already had it. You can learn about the whole HD multiplex idea. You can learn about their advanced user interface, the AUI. You can also learn about HD reliable transport. That's something that my employer, Telos Alliance, has worked with Nautel on to prove out and show how well that it works. Your radio air chain also. And so Nautel is a great resource to go to. They do have a resources tab, but you can find out about their AM, their FM, and their digital radio offerings, plus all the resources of white papers, books, videos, and webinars, all on the Nautel website. So let me encourage you to go there, Nautel.com, and take your pick of all the things you want to choose from. Watch out for their Transmission Talk Tuesday roundtable discussions to come back in February as we wake Jeff Welton up from his sleep, and he'll be back to do those. Thanks a lot, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech at Nautel.com. We are here with George Whittam, and George, great to have you back. your expertise comes in building and fixing and designing voiceover studios. During COVID, your VO customers tended to be people who did VO for a living anyway. But during COVID, we sure got a whole rash of people doing more voice tracking for radio from home. Have those people been a part of your consultancy?
Yeah, the folks that were doing a lot of the stuff for radio, I think some of them were used to doing it, and then a few folks that I knew that were going into stations and doing that work had to do that work from home. Typically, the engineers at that station came up with a kit that they brought home with them that they would record into the automation and do all that.
Oh yeah.
I had a client who is with 94.7 The Wave, and she had to do that. She had to learn how to make all that work. It was a little intimidating for her. So, in the same vein, but in a different vertical, different industry, we had all these animation voice actors who live in Hollywood, work in Hollywood, drive to the studio, just like a regular acting gig. That's their life. And all of a sudden, there ain't no studio to go to. They have to do it at home. And I got calls from the most variety of different styles of actors, ages. I'm getting calls from folks in their 70s or more who are now forced to have a home studio. And some of them don't even work that much, but now they realize the agent's like, well, if you want to keep working, you got to have it. And it was very intimidating for a lot of these voice actors who did not have a work-at-home studio. While my whole client base is based around home studios, there was this new ingest of actors who were being dragged, kicking and screaming, into having a home studio. So that was a big adjustment that I helped a lot of those folks.
In fact, I was just looking here at your website, George, and if I could bring this one thing up, I saw you on a podcast here, Allison's Wonderland, and this is an animation voice actress, right?
Yeah, Allison is a talented animation and video game voice, and her show is all about talking about those industries. Mm-hmm. And she's been a client of mine. I designed her studio, and so when she was ready to start a new season of her show, she made a whole new set, and I helped her set up her cameras and get everything set up audio-wise, so that was an easy workflow for her. But anyway, that's what I'm doing here, talking with her about trends in the industry, things that are happening that we all have to kind of adjust to in this coming year.
Not sure where we want to go with the show next. I think we can get a lot of conversation started around some of the pictures that you have, and I'm looking away because I'm trying desperately here to get this. You're
multitasking.
I'm multitasking. This makes me appreciate even more my producer, who's normally here doing these things for me. So that's why I have to look away from the camera.
Absolutely. We do VOBS TV the same way, and we have a producer, TD, that helps us keep that show flowing. And when she's not there, you can tell it's much harder to keep that flow going. You can make it work, but it doesn't flow like it usually does. Anyway, there we go. There's the gallery.
Yeah,
on GeorgeThe.Tech.
So we're going to look at GeorgeThe.Tech. That's so cool. And so we're just going to look at some of your handiwork, things that you've built from scratch or consulted or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you want to tell me if you want me to go deeper into any of these pictures to describe
scroll down
the tech.
a little bit. You'll see Allison's studio, which is it's the one that has like a view looking downward into a bigger room. Keep going.
Okay.
And keep going and keep going and a little bit more, and there it is. Boom. So that is the room that you saw me just sitting in with all the roses and stuff on the wall. That was underneath the loft on the right. This is a tiny house. She had slab up built a tiny home that I found a design for online that she liked. Mm-hmm. It's 12 feet. 12 by 10 feet. It's the absolute maximum space she could build on her property in her backyard, and it's an entire soundproof room. It's the entire thing is soundproofed. It was a $100,000 plus build.
So she does a whole VO business out of a tiny house.
Yeah, I mean this is in the backyard behind her home in Toluca Lake area.
Okay,
and we treated it and built this thing to allow her to work anytime, no matter what's going on. It has double sliding patio doors to enter, so it has like a mini airlock to give you that extra level of isolation. And if you click on it, I mean, there are a lot of photos. You'll see it's literally a build log of the entire build. So if you flip through it real quick, you can see, I mean, this was a literal from ground up build. And I'm the designer on this, you know, I'm like a designer consultant. And then the contractors coming in and doing, there's some video interspersed. You don't have to watch that. But there's detailed photos of some of the issues that needed to be fixed. I love to log as much as we can and keep a record of the whole process. But you can see it's like it's a building inside a building. You have an outside building, and then you have an inside building that's the interior frame that the inside is constructed on. Even the loft is not attached to the outside of the building.
Really?
Everything is on the inside of the building. It's literally a room in a room. So building inside a building.
This is actually dead quiet then, isn't it?
It is really quiet. The only look, those windows, they were over-engineered. They shipped them in, and I said, we don't need 4 panes of glass per window, but thanks.
Okay.
The windows were crazy over-engineered, but it's got lots of glass on all the windows, and then it's got an interior and exterior window assembly. So you have one assembly on the outside, one assembly on the inside. Everything is doubled up to create that isolation chamber that you need to have an entire room be soundproof. And there are very few folks out there that will invest at this level for a voiceover studio. But as they say, if you have the means, it is so choice.
Oh my goodness!
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
You want to talk about some of the gear that's here?
Yeah. Well, so when this studio was installed, she was still using ISDN pretty consistently and using an Avalon 737 preamp, which there are still folks these are in their studios. They love them. And that was just the basics of what she's using. Nowadays, it's been 8-9 years now. The studio is centered around a Universal Audio Apollo. And I have many, many, many studios built and based around the Apollo now, because it's one of those pieces of gear that I've been learning on. I've been training myself on it for 11 years, since it came out. So I take it as like I know every little idiosyncrasy, every little weird thing about it. And I figured out every way to hack this thing to make it work in a voiceover studio. This is music production gear being shoehorned into a voiceover studio.
And how are those tasks really, really different? What are some of the key points that makes music recording different than voice recording?
So in the music context, it's all about multi-track. You want to bring in a whole bunch of signals, print them, have them there so that we can manipulate, edit, and mix them later, right? That's what music recording is all about. And so a device like Apollo is centered all around doing just that, multi-track. What we want to do in broadcast, and when I say a voiceover studio is broadcast, it's not live to air, but it is live to another studio, or it's live to tape, right? You're recording and you have other elements involved in doing so. And that involves, you guys all know the word, mix minus.
Yeah.
You need sometimes several mix minuses to have a fully equipped voiceover recording studio, so that you've got a mix minus for your studio monitors, a mix minus for your headphones, a mix minus for the recording track itself, a mix minus for the communications channel that goes back out. That used to be ISDN, but whatever technology that you're using, all these things require their own mixes. Yeah. And that requires a lot of aux sends. And most of the gear out there isn't suited to do this. It doesn't have the flexibility. It doesn't have the routing. And you're taught, basically we had to do it like the old days. We had to have a big analog desk with at least 2 aux sends and a couple of buses. And you needed this big giant mixer just to do all the, signal routing. That's all it was doing. It was just busing things from here to there, right? Now that can be all done in a digital domain, and the Apollo has the flexibility to allow that to happen. And I can literally rewire the thing internally to now do the job perfectly. I can say, I don't need these 17 channels. I only need these 2 channels, and I want these inputs to go to these channels, and I can rewire it entirely. It's very flexible.
Wow. And wow. Okay. I can see where it's, somebody really doing VO works. Sometimes I think of a VO studio as literally a microphone, a preamp, a little bit of processing, and a computer, and maybe a really reliable hard drive. And
that's really the basics. I mean, the basics of what most voice actors will need, especially the folks getting started, doing self-record, self-directed work is just a good mic, really good acoustics, a low noise floor, and a reliable computer. You know, I happen to be a Mac fan. Obviously Windows works if you have a system built properly for audio production. It works fine. But you need a system that you can rely on. It's consistent, and you get the same sound quality day after day after day. That kind of consistency is super important. And so, in a way, it's almost like you're making a broadcast on-air studio in a very miniature, condensed format in a home. It's kind of like that, right? Because you need that level of sound quality and consistency.
So help me understand something here about your business. Is this the Apollo you're talking about, or some other?
That is the very same. In fact, I have one. I'm actually using one right now for the show.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I looked at this and thought it was basically the same as every other USB interface, but you talked about things you can do internally to it. What makes this such an amazing box for your use?
The magic is the part you can't see. Can I show you something really quick?
Sure. Can you?
Yeah, let's try this. Let's choose share screen. We'll do a Chrome. We'll do a window. We'll try this. I can only show one of these at a time. Well, let's just do this first. Here is the console, right? So this is the console interface for the Apollo Twin, right? So this is where all the magic's happening, right? So the Apollo on the surface looks like a 2-in, 2-out, very basic interface. And if you don't know how to use any of the software, that's what it is.
Okay.
It's just a 2-in, 2-out gain, 2 microphone preamps, a monitor headphone output, and that's it, right?
Wait a minute. When I talk, the playback meter wiggles. And when you talk, the desk meter wiggles. Okay, because you're hearing me, obviously, through our StreamYard connection.
Yeah, that's one of my mix minuses. So I have a playback or loopback mix minus. That's coming back from you. That's coming up in my cans. But then I have a mix minus right here that if I was to unmute this and you were to talk, say hello.
1, 2. 1, 2. I hear it back.
You hear it back, right? So that's one of the mix minuses I have to make. I also have another channel that's Mac sound system. That's just the sound coming from the Mac. Mm-hmm. This could also be a sound coming from a DAW, for example. And then desk is my desk mic, and booth is my booth mic, the mic that's inside this ISO booth behind me, right? That's all coming in there. But that's half the story. The other half of the story is actually the amount of routing that's happening under the hood, which is called the I/O matrix. And I'll show you this real quick.
Sure.
Your followers will enjoy the matrix idea. There we go. This is the power user part of it. This is the matrix. In other systems, they might call this the busing or in broadcast, you have all these signal matrices, right?
Yeah, or routing. We might call it routing.
Yeah, this is the router, right? This is a router, and I can completely customize the routing to do exactly what I want it to do. The default is not anything at all what this looks like. The default is every single channel is an input on the Apollo. Okay. I don't want an input on the Apollo on every channel. I want an auxiliary mix to be input 1 on the Apollo. Okay. So I can create my own mix to send out. And that's what I'm doing. I'm manipulating, and I'm also manipulating the outputs. So instead of the default outputs being the speakers, now the default outputs are a fader on what's called the virtual channels of the console. So I have to reimagine the way the Apollo was designed for a whole different purpose. And it's taken years to wrap my head around how to do this. But that's the secret. You guys just saw it here on the air. Take screenshots because that's how it's done. That's my secret.
Well, there are some similar things that go on in the broadcast engineering world, but you've just introduced us to how this gets done in the VO world. And the main thing, I'm blown away. I had no idea the Apollo had all that internal. I thought it was just another stereo in, stereo out USB interface. So that cost a lot of money. So
yeah, it's a tricky thing, and people buy them because they get enamored by the plugins. They have all these models of real pieces of gear, and they get so excited about. I'm like, that's not what this thing's all about. That's great. I have an API Vision channel strip on my voice right now. It sounds great. I have a Teletronics LA2A on my voice right now, right? That's all there. I can turn it off at a click of a button, and then now it's more flat and turn it back on. But that's not what voice actors need. They don't need a ton of front-end processing and a ton of color. They need clean, low noise, zero distortion recording. That is the key. And then the rest is it's just great. It's gravy. Like anything else I can do to just bolster the levels or get a higher output level, is what I want to do. But I don't want a lot of junk in there. I don't want a lot of color. I don't want distortion. I want clean audio.
You want it to be the voice actor, but you want it to be the best at that. No, nothing irritating. Get rid of anything that's not complimentary.
Nothing distracting.
Yeah.
If you hear a voice and you go, oh, that sibilance is distracting, or that mouth noise is distracting, or whatever, that's the stuff I'm paying attention to. And then it's trying to control the luffs, right? And in the voiceover world, nobody knows what the hell that means, right? So I'm constantly pounding on people like, pay attention to your luffs. Try to come in around -20. That's kind of where we've coalesced around kind of like the average delivery level for auditions, Try to come in around there. Well, how do you do that? Well, then I show them techniques to try to get those levels, consistent. And that's one of the hardest things for voice actors. Self-recording and then giving consistent level output. Their levels tend to be all over the place.
We are talking to George Whittam. He is your podcast is called.
Well, I've got a couple, right? I've got the show, which is kind of like what we're doing here. That's VOBS.TV. And then I have a really geeky one called the Pro Audio Suite. That's a traditional podcast. There's no video yet.
Oh, okay.
It's all audio. And that's the Pro Audio Suite. That's 4 of us that just go down the rat hole about any number of topics, from mix minuses to mic preamps and all sorts of matter of everything having to do with recording voiceover and sometimes even music and broadcasts too.
We're talking to George Whittam, and we're going to be back with George in a minute. We're going to hopefully hear maybe a story or two about some unusual situations or interesting problems to fix. George may review a couple pieces of gear he's liking a lot lately, including the Apollo he just talked about. And we're going to look at some more studio pictures. All that is coming up on This Week in Radio Tech. We're going to hear now from our friends at Broadcast Bionics and the Bionic Studio.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI. And incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
Hello. Thanks so kindly to Broadcast Bionics and their sponsorship of This Week in Radio Tech. They've got amazing things like Camera One, Phone One, and a whole Bionic suite of stuff. Check them out at bionic.radio or bionics.co.uk. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack. I'm here with George Whittam. George is the kind of the engineer to the stars, right? And George, I was wondering if you might be able to relate to us. You can keep the names secret. The names maybe are not important Just knowing there's probably somebody we've heard before tonight on The Simpsons, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if you might have a war story to relate to us. The Don LaFontaine story, I think you told the first time you were on our show about how there were buzzes and hums and things like that, and you went in. The guy had great equipment, but it sounds like it wasn't hooked up well. What other sorts of things have you come across that you could relate to us?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I decided I needed to do this, because there were installers doing these overly complicated and elaborate studios for a voice actor who didn't need most of the stuff. And then certain very important details were being overlooked. Like in that case, they didn't realize that it'd be a bad idea to have an electronic dimmer rack for the entire house's electronic dimming system to be hanging directly on the wall behind a giant analog mixing desk. Ooh. They didn't realize that would create MFI and create a nasty buzz every time it got dark. The whole house had a digitally controlled dimming system. It was next level. I've never seen anything like it in a home. But that's what it had, and it created noise, and I had to figure that out the hard way. Man, the war stories, a lot of them come down to voice actors having to work from the road. Oh. We like to say that, there's something in the voiceover business about golden handcuffs. I know there's a lot of versions of golden handcuffs, but in voiceover, golden handcuffs is you've got a contract, you might be doing an affiliate station job that never stops. It never ends. You're on call from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every single day, or maybe promo, or even a trailer campaign. Maybe you get on a trailer campaign. If you get a voice actor on a trailer campaign, if that campaign keeps right on going because the movies get nominated, they keep doing more and more and more and more spots, and they expect the voice actor to do them like right now, like 30 minutes from now. I don't care what you're doing. So a lot of the innovation and the challenges of what I've been doing over the last 15 years is figuring out how voice actors can travel and still connect to their clients and deliver them the same level of quality they expect to get from when they're in their home studio. That's sort of like when it comes to voice actors going to war, that tends to be when that really comes up, that challenge.
I'm a little curious about I was going to put this off till later on, but I'll probably forget. So let me ask you about it now. Artificial intelligence and how it might apply to the audio world. I saw a demo on YouTube in the last few days, a fellow explaining this Adobe plugin that purported to remove all kinds of crazy room noise and even make a $5 stupid condenser mic sound kind of reasonable. Now, one reason you spend $100,000 on a little house and a studio that's totally isolated is so you don't have to use those tools, and that you're starting with a great product. Do you have any thoughts about AI and where this might take us in terms of making bad audio sound good?
Oh boy, do I ever!
Okay.
AI it's got all of our industry on edge, to say the least. We're hearing better and better voice models, better and better tools for automating so many different tasks. And all of us know really that if we're not learning how to make use of AI in our fields, that we're going to fall behind, right? This is the truth of it. Well, AI is being used in a lot of really interesting ways, like noise reduction, like you just said. In fact, timing-wise, we're going to bring on a gentleman named Michael Pearson Adams from Waves, who is known for making one of the absolute most iconic and innovative noise reduction plugins out there. It's called Clarity. And Clarity is using a neural network. It listens to your voice, and it figures out what in that signal is actual human voice and what is not. And so what it's allowing you to do is remove very extreme noises and very random noises, because it knows what your voice is. So it knows that everything else that's not your voice can be removed, right? Yeah. And it's incredible. It'll remove a random door shutting sound like ka-chunk. It'll remove that because that's not human voice. It's amazing, and those are the kinds of AI driven processing tools that we're talking about. The thing is, some of them do audio that I would say is good enough for maybe podcasting. But what I've heard of all of these magic tools, like the Adobe tool, is that it makes audio, and there's a few others that I've been playing with. Some of them make audio that's good enough. It's pretty good. It, a lot of people, the average listener would be very impressed, right? But the pros, no. The people that actually care about audio quality, they know and they still hear the difference between a digitally manipulated version of the audio and a proper, clean, unadulterated version of that audio. And it's going to be a while before the AI tools are so impressive that the two are indistinguishable. It's going to be a long time. Just like there's no animated features yet with human faces that are real because of what they call uncanny valley, right? What was that? Was it the Express, Polar Express? This was the first movie years ago with Tom Hanks where they animated everybody's faces, but they all had this zombie stare because they just didn't quite look human, right?
Yeah.
We're 10, 12 years later, we're still not trying to animate human faces that look realistic on features because we still can't do it well. And the same is going to be true for voices and other things. There's going to be this uncanny valley that's going to continue on for a very long time.
That's an interesting phrase, uncanny valley. But we know that if something animated is trying to fool you to thinking it's real and it's not, especially a human face, it gets creepy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's a little easier with voice, obviously, because there's a visual component's not there.
Yeah.
But the closer you listen to it, the more you'll notice it. It's like anything else. The more discerning you are, the more you will be wanting to continue to hear live, real human performance. We still have orchestra scoring stages at Warner Brothers. We don't have a guy. Yeah, we do have. Who's that amazing scorer, that the German guy that does everything nowadays? Why am I forgetting his name? This guy has synthesizers that can do everything, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's still going to bring an orchestra in and score with real instruments, real humans. And
I may be speaking from literally 20-year-old knowledge here, but it's the difference between a drum machine and a live drummer.
Yeah, and there are guys now that are extremely good. We call them drum programmers, right? That can do very realistic, real feeling, real sounding programmed drums. And that has become it is getting so good that you may not know that it's programmed drums. But there are still plenty of drum session drummers. Yeah, there's probably fewer now than there were 10 years ago. But there are still out there. People still want to see live human beings play music live.
Sure.
It's weird. We know that a big chunk of the business is going to fall away. It's going to become AI'd. We know that. There's certain things that can be very easily done with AI, but the things that involve human emotion, actual acting, it'll take more time and money to program an AI to sound real than a real person can just do it.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to get back in the tech talk for our broadcast engineer friends, but I love the sidebarring for philosophical discussion. It seems like a year, two years ago, maybe just before COVID, there were some services popping up where they were using an engine, but you could type in a radio advertising text and choose the voice you wanted, and it would come back at you. And it's one of these things that the first few times you hear it, you think, well, that's really good. But then you realize...
At first you're impressed.
The first few times, but after you hear it a few times, you realize, I know exactly how this voice is going to say that sentence, and I'm tired of it. I'd like a little variation, please. And I hate to admit this, and younger folks in our audience will say, well, Kirk, you idiot. But the first time I heard MP3, I thought, wow, that's amazing, because I didn't know what artifacts to listen for. My brain had never processed those artifacts.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
And, 10, 15 years later, like, oh, no, I'm not really that crazy about MP3 anymore. I really like, the original full spectrum WAV file. There are things that sound better about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
it is all about training and discernment. The good news is that I think that thanks to, things like the Apple AirPods, good sounding earbuds are becoming more common, right? So I think more and more young people, my daughter's 13, her hearing, and she is more discerning now about the way something would sound than maybe a 13-year-old was 10 years ago, right? Oh. So I feel like there's something there that maybe it's the tail wagging the dog, but whatever it is, I think that even I know it's compressed, I know it's Bluetooth, all this stuff, but at the end of the day, my daughter would rather put on a big pair of headphones that go over her ears and plug in with a cable to her phone than any of this other stuff, because I think she notices the differences. She may not know why, but she can hear it. And I think that's a good thing, is that more kids can get access to better sounding headphones now for very inexpensive, and they can hear things that we couldn't hear as well without spending a lot of money back in the day.
That's an interesting concept, because 10 years ago, my ex's daughter played me some music from her little flip phone, and I thought, that sounds just terrible. How'd you get that on your phone, sweetie? Well, I held my phone up to Claire's phone and played and recorded. Oh my gosh! Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we all did that. I recorded the radio with a boombox sitting in front of a speaker when I was 7 or 8 years old.
I didn't have. I'm a little older. I had a Craig brand cassette recorder. Just a little portable. Hey, you mentioned headphones. On a recent show, you talked about your new headphones for 2023. You want to tell us about anything new you've discovered?
Which I'm not using right now. Yeah, I'm using my old standbys right now. It's the old Beyerdynamic DT 770 Pros. I've loved these since I was doing radio broadcasts. They're just so comfortable. They're like pillows on my head. I love them. I love the way they sound. But I've been trying other things, because headphones, like everything else, there's constant flow of new ones. Yeah. One company that I've been dealing with some of their products through our podcast sponsorship is Austrian Audio. And these headphones from them, these are the Hi-X15. This is their entry-level headphone, right? They go way up from here. This is about a $129 headphone. So comfortable, first of all. Like super, like really soft, plush, deep ear pads. Really nice, pleasing EQ. Not overly boomy. It's got enough presence that you can really hear detail, but not overly so. And these are a really nice option. They have much higher end ones, in the $300 range. But I'll tell you, these will replace your Sonys. If you've been tired of wearing the same Sony headphones for 20 years, give these a shot. I think you're going to be amazed by them.
Couldn't help but notice that there's a big L and a big R inside. And what I see? No more arguing with the jock over which is the left and the right. It's pretty plain.
Yes, exactly. How many companies don't do that? Like, make that clear.
Well, there's a little tiny L somewhere.
Right.
That's a little.
And then it's got a lot of them now have these interchangeable cables, which if your jock damages or rips the cable out, they turn around and it rips out of the thing. You can replace the cable. So that's definitely, you want replaceable cables on all your headphones. I've also tried a pair of headphones from a company called One More. That is a Bluetooth headphone. I was blown away with how good it sounded for being Bluetooth and being, it's got a very similar sort of ear cup design to this one. And One More is a very interesting, niche, little weird hi-fi budget company that sells direct. So, it's very much word of mouth, but it's literally spelled one, the number one, more. That's the brand. And they make some really interesting stuff. So I've been trying a lot of headphones, but at the end of the day, I put these back on my head every single day when I'm at my desk, these Beyerdynamics.
One thing that we have in broadcast, I would imagine you might have in VO work as well, is people who have worn headphones, cranked them up really loud. Heck, I've been to stations where they used a Crown D75 amp for the headphone amp, and the jocks are hard of hearing. And so you crank them up very loud, and you get the squeal, the feedback between the headphone and the mic. Do you ever experience that problem?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a few clients. I go to their studio and I'm like, let me test out your gear. I pick up their cans and it immediately feeds back with the mic as the headphones pass by the microphone, and and it's like that. I'm like, holy smoke, And these are usually voice actors that have been doing this for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And the worst is the ones that have been doing it like this for 20 years. 1 year on, 1 year off.
Oh.
That ear that they've been using for 20 years is severely damaged, like hearing-wise, like a lot of hearing lost. So some of them I know that I've encouraged to try in-ear monitors. If they can find something comfortable enough for them to wear, you can run lower SPLs, and it keeps out all the background noise. And I think they're a good idea if you want to try something different. But man, yeah, headphones have caused a lot of hearing damage for folks.
Well, let me ask you, in-ear monitors keep external noise out by physical activity, by blocking it. What about noise-canceling headphones? I remember years ago I bought my first, I guess they were Bose.
Probably Bose, huh?
Noise-canceling headphones. Yeah. And I remember just being able to listen at lower volumes, and it was perfectly satisfying. But there may have been some coloration of the audio, and I was adjusting audio processing. But I could do so in a noisy transmitter room, adjust, the Omnia or the Orban or whatever it was.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about the accuracy of noise canceling headphones?
Well, I mean, it's gotten dramatically better. Like these One Mores, when I turn on the noise canceling, there's almost a very minimal difference in the way they sound. Whereas maybe 3, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I turned on the noise canceling, yes, there was a difference in the way the headphones sounded. It did change their tonal balance in a subtle way, and sometimes it increases the noise because there's like a little bit, it's noise canceling, but there's like a hiss that's just always there, just so that has definitely improved dramatically with the newer technology. But that's the key. You want to make sure that if you are using noise canceling, to make sure it's not really coloring the sound in any way, so you're still hearing things correctly. I wouldn't necessarily recommend them for an actor wearing headphones while actually performing, because I think it's very weird. It's a weird sound in your head because it's trying to subtract out your own sound of your voice from your headphones. Oh, because
you've got bone conduction, you've got stuff going on around you. Come to think of it, I only use my noise canceling to listen to things, never to speak.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever recommend a noise canceling headphone for tracking or for actual performance. Yeah, there might be some exceptions to that, but I don't recommend it. But for monitoring back in extreme cases like yours, and certainly listening on an airplane or anywhere else where it's in a high noise environment, the noise canceling is a godsend. Because then you can run a lower level. You don't blow your ears out trying to hear a podcast over the din of a jet engine.
Interesting what you said about jocks who wear one ear cup off. I always thought that was a good thing. It helped me. It helped me not be a jock and work the microphone processing. I felt it helped me speak more naturally. But I can see that if you're used to cranking it up now. Do you find people your talent that you work with tend to be left-eared or right-eared, or do they? Because, for example, I'm wearing this little earbud right here. I'll take it out. Yep. So I can't hear you right now, and I don't think it's very loud. But I don't want to. I personally don't want to wear headphones. And if I put it in my right ear, I feel like it just feels weird. I feel like my cognition is not as high. Sure. Because when I hold my phone up, when I do anything, it's the left is preferred.
Yeah, that ear is like the way your ear and your brain are connected. They're trained for that purpose. So now you move the thing to the other side. And that ear isn't trained. That part of the brain isn't trained with that ear. It just doesn't work as well.
I'm left-handed. If I put this in my right ear, it's about as comfortable as me throwing a baseball with my right hand, which I wouldn't normally do.
It makes total sense. Absolutely, yeah. Whatever it is, you can always damage your hearing if you're not careful. That is for sure.
I'm sorry. That's a bad joke. I'm sorry.
Like in your case, you're using that to monitor me, but you're not using it to monitor yourself. Whereas I'm using my headphones to monitor myself the way like a jock might want to monitor themselves. Right. Because I'm not saying that's a good habit. If I was a voice actor, I would not recommend doing that. Yeah. But because I'm broadcasting, I kind of like to hear the way that I'm actually sounding coming out in the air. I want to hear how much the compressor is compressing. And that's the engineer side of me wanting to hear that as I'm talking.
Boy, I started an AM radio, and there were probably 3 compressors between me and the transmitter, and I wanted to hear you'd work your voice, and unfortunately, the result oftentimes is we talk like this to kind of modulate the compressors along the way.
Voice actors who transition out of radio to VO, it's a very long, difficult transition on the whole. It takes them a long time to train them. My dear longtime friend in the business, Bo Weaver. He will talk about this. He's done it. He's spoken at conferences. Anybody will listen. He'll tell you what it's like to make that transition, and that it takes a lot of acting coaching. It takes a lot to take that radio out of your voice. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know Bo. I've met him and talked to him for quite a while. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nice guy. Hey, when we come back, we're talking to George Whittam, and George is an engineer, and he helps people both hands-on locally, and he can do remote service. He and his staff for people specializing in voiceover studios. There's so much to talk about, George. I'm not sure where we're going to go, but I do want to hear one thing when we come back from the spot break, an opinion about handheld mics or portable mics, because some broadcasters still do live remote broadcasts. They hold a mic, or sports broadcasts. You're down on the field. You're the field reporter. You want to hold a mic. All interviews, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of those things. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack. We're doing This Week in Radio Tech live from the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to bring up Angry Audio and a product that some of George's clients could probably use. I
like this company. I think Angry Audio is really cool. I love these small niche companies that come up with problem-solving devices.
Well,
it's really cool.
This one is the Bluetooth audio gadget, and this lets you put your smartphone, on the air, so to speak. And sometimes, hey, you're doing a podcast, maybe you did an interview on your smartphone just by holding it up, right? And you don't have time for the file transfer, or you can't figure out iCloud and how to please let me get my file. Well, you know what? You can play it back live through the Bluetooth audio gadget. And there's what it looks like. It's got a little Bluetooth antenna on it. Mm-hmm. It's easy to pair up with your phone. There's a pairing button on there. One of the buttons on the front is spring activated, and you activate it. It goes into pairing mode. You pair it with your Bluetooth on your phone, and this is what's cool, because other devices do this too, but this one does it really well.
They make it a pro tool. It's not consumer grade. It's pro grade.
And part of what makes that is that it really knows the difference between putting a phone conversation, a two-way conversation, through its audio inputs and outputs, and just a one-way playback from your phone. So if you've got an interview you want to play back, it plays back in the highest possible quality using aptX or AAC on the iPhone as the codec between the two. But if you want to conduct a phone call and put that on your podcast, just open turn on whatever, your cell phone, hook it to this, and then let's see if we got here's a picture of the back.
I'm looking at it right now. I literally know somebody that needs this.
Well, there you go. Go.
Absolutely.
It has an AES digital output on it, but then it also has analog input on XLR and fully balanced analog output on XLR. Power supplies built in. There's no wall wart. Yeah. It's fully approved. It's available, in 115 volt and 230 volt voltages. Nice. And if you have a phone that still has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack on it, you can connect it directly up, and you just use this as a balancing interface between your phone and your audio console. So this is really professional.
Very useful.
I've talked to so many people who love this Bluetooth audio gadget. You get it from Angry Audio. You can go to angryaudio.com. And I got to tell you, I'm so lucky. They're just down the street from me. I say down the street, I mean a 20-minute drive. And I was just in there a couple weeks ago talking to the owner, Mike Dosh, and his helper, wife, AJ. And wow, what a great little business that they have there, making amazing things. And if you wire with Studio Hub, which many people do, they got the full Studio Hub line there, the dongles, the adapters, the cable kits, and all that. So check it out from Angry Audio, angryaudio.com. Hey, I also want to mention our friends at Max Connect Wireless, because Max Connect, the Max Connect group, they can do so much for you, including and especially the Max Connect wireless device. I got one right here, and I've also got John Takak with Radio 1 to tell you about it.
With all of the recent cybersecurity attacks against large corporations, we were looking for a product that would give us the ultimate security at our transmitter sites and as well as with our broadcast equipment. Max Connect fits the bill very well. Its greatest security feature is the fact that it gives you a single static IP address. Using this single static IP address allows us to close hundreds of open ports on our firewalls across the company and restrict access to only the Max Connect IPs. This has greatly reduced our exposure to the World Wide Web and made us much more secure moving forward. It has also given us the ability to expand as needed in a secure fashion.
benefit about Max Connect Wireless is even if you're in a crowded place with lots of people, let's say a stadium, and everybody's got their phones on, they're doing their Facebook updates, checking their Twitter, making phone calls and FaceTimes, you still get bandwidth because the only people with a higher priority packets than you have are first responders. So this is amazing stuff. It works even in high density environments. You get your bandwidth. And I have personally used Max Connect in a couple of emergency situations to keep stations on the air, streaming, and even literally on the air, keep their transmitters running because their STL was an IP STL. And, when the cable company breaks your cable, you got to do something else. So Max Connect Wireless can get that done for you. Thanks a lot, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. In fact, it was this one right here. This kept WEVL in Memphis, Tennessee, the volunteer station there, community station, on the air for a whole week, and during their fund drive, during their pledge drive, too. Hey, we're here talking to George Whittam. He is the engineer to the stars.
That's another tab in my browser now. The Max Connect.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have clients, like, talk about being road warriors. I have a client who has one of those diesel pushers, the big tour buses types, campers. He's got a mast. He puts up a mast in his campground, so he gets the best LTE out of anybody. Yeah. But this takes it to the next level because of that prioritization. That's the key.
Yeah, it's particularly good, as long as we're mentioning it. It doesn't always offer the highest bandwidth, although I got to tell you, I was on my honeymoon a couple weeks ago, and we were at a seaside bar, and I did the show from there, and with the hotel Wi-Fi was great, and then it was gone, and great, and it was gone, and great, and it was gone. So then I tried my cell phone, which I was getting pretty good 5G speed out of my T-Mobile cell phone as a hotspot, but sometimes it would get wonky, and I'd lose packets, and several seconds would go by when I got bad connectivity. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna hook this up. Well, this one has 2 SIM cards. I tried Verizon. It turned out Verizon wasn't great right there. I'm sure it's great other places, but it wasn't great there. Tried AT&T, and I got 13 megs down and about 10 or 12 megs up. Doesn't sound like a lot, but I feel like every packet was getting through. It wasn't, and it was consistent the whole hour. Didn't lose a beat. It just worked.
That word, you're going to hear it over and over. Consistent.
It was consistent.
We want consistency. We don't need maximum, like people buying computers. I need this thing with all these bells and whistles and the most meg RAM and the most fastest CPU and the biggest GPU. No, you need the right tool for the job. Something that it doesn't make a lot of heat, doesn't make a lot of noise, reliable and consistent. Like you just can count on it day after day. That's what we beg for in a home studio. And like, I know it's not quite broadcast, a home studio can go offline for brief periods of time.
Right.
But for some voice actors, that brief period of time that their studio is down, they could lose a gig. Like a lot of that promo stuff is none of it's on contract. You can be the voice of NBC comedy Monday night and then it's gone because you didn't show up to work that moment, so that uptime for even voice actors can be really critical.
And there's probably 50 people in their Rolodex who would like to do it too.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've got clients who lost the gig, and another one of my clients got the gig. Hey, I'm the new voice of so and so. Oh, he isn't anymore. Okay, that's how it goes.
Can you talk to us for a minute about a handheld mic or a portable mic?
I wish I had one with me. Handheld mics, we all know them. They go from $19 to $700, right? Cheap, like a cheap Pile brand handheld dynamic, all the way up to Neumann. Neumann makes a really, really good handheld. And what I found is that, and I'm going to get my hands on one very soon for testing, is that what the companies do, like Sennheiser, Neumann, Audio Technica, is they're taking their studio grade capsules and circuits and everything and just repackaging it. So you're getting a 1-inch large diaphragm condenser capsule, but now it's packaged in a way that's way more voice friendly. It's not this big kind of awkward, bulky mic that takes up a lot of space. They travel well because they're literally made to be handheld and traveled with on the road. They're internally shock mounted. They're internally pop screened. and some of them even have some internal filtering. One of them, the Sennheiser, and just because I've been researching this recently, so these model numbers are still in my head. the E965, I believe, is a dual capsule. You would never know it. It just looks like a regular handheld, but it's a dual 1-inch diaphragm capsule mic in a handheld. And inside the head basket, you can choose cardioid or supercardioid. So you can set that pickup pattern, and it's switching the diaphragm polarization based on what the pickup patterns needed. That's a $400 mic. That's pretty sophisticated for a handheld microphone, and I think that mic could be an incredibly versatile tool. That can go out in the field. That can be studio recording. That can be voice acting while traveling, and all kinds of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to start doing some testing with that. And we're going to get some of those mics from Sennheiser because another venture I'm on called TriBooth, where we make these portable pop-up voiceover booths.
Oh, yeah.
We got some things boiling in the background that might get us more involved with Sennheiser. So if that happens, and when that happens, was I allowed to say that? We'll find out. We're going to be getting more of their mics to test out in our TriBooth. But I think handhelds are, they are because they all look similar, from, like, again, a $20 handheld to a $700 handheld. I think there's this thought that they can't give you extreme fidelity, extreme studio quality audio, and that's definitely not true. The specs on them now are really impressive.
What do you call because I've got a Sennheiser mic that's like the TV version, the on camera. It's because it's just got a longer handle on it. Maybe it's got more to it. I don't think so though. But I can't think of the model number.
Is it the 52 or something like that? MD52 or MD something. Yeah, they make interview mics. Some of them have a longer neck, some of them are shorter, and the long neck ones are obviously really great for man on the street doing on the spot back and forth interviews. And the thing is that makes these mics work so well for that kind of use case is they're omnidirectional. Omnidirectional is what you want for that, because now you're not worried so much about proximity.
Oh.
When you're using those cardioids, the proximity is critical. Like if it's too close, it gets plosive and boomy and poppy, and too far away and it doesn't sound great. Omnis are way more forgiving. You can barely pop them. They don't have proximity effect, so you can get it somewhere near their face, and as long as there's not too much background noise, you can get clean audio. And that's why, going way back to the original EV, what is the 635A, the little gray, I still have one of those. I used it for doing NAMM show, trade show interviews for years, because you can't screw it up. First of all, you can hammer a nail with it.
Yeah, I use it putting paneling in the garage with the little paneling nails.
Yeah. And you can't really screw it up too bad. If it's here, it sounds okay. If it's here, it sounds okay. It's not sensitive to that. So mics for the purpose is definitely something. I would not use those high-end condenser cardioids for like a man on the street interview. That would be tough.
A few years ago, I saw a behind the scenes video of interviewing President Obama, and I forget who the interviewer was. It may have been Bill O'Reilly. It may have been somebody else, but they were going to interview President Obama, and they had these presidential chairs that were old and expensive and quite valuable, but the mic they used it looked like the same mic I'm using,
like a Sennheiser shotgun,
the Sennheiser MK465, and they clamped them to the armrests, and so they were just out of camera shot, and of course, they would have had to stay in a pretty small area. But I don't, in a presidential interview, you're not going to be bouncing around so much.
Sure,
you're going to be very, very proper, prim, and respectful.
Yeah, and the mic has to be predetermined. Which way is the actor? Which way is the interviewee? Which way are they going to be looking? Which way are they going to be facing? Because as soon as they do this, they're off mic.
They're off mic,
So that all has to be planned out in advance.
Pretty sure they angled the chair so that they had to look a certain way.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that when you go in to talk to the president, you don't move the chair around.
Well, they were probably like, you get 10 minutes. If the sound guy has to lav up the president, there's your 10 minutes. So it's like they want him to sit down, bang out that interview, and walk off set. And that's probably why they did that, because normally you would probably lav lab the person.
You would think,
right?
yeah.
But there they had control of the environment. They could control over the cameras, the lighting, the everything. Boom, put the mics in a fixed location. It's really great idea.
I wish we weren't running so short on time, but I would like to. You mentioned the David K studio build. Would you like to look at some of those pictures?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. This one goes back a ways. This is about 10. Well, yeah, there you go. 2013. This was a pool cabana that had a little upstairs section to it that was like a little extra room, and it was really cool. And as you can see, there's a little extra room up there. We took the front half of that, which was like had a steam room and a bathroom, and completely reconfigured it, blew out the ceiling and vaulted it, so it had a vaulted ceiling. So the original ceiling was a flat deck. When we were done with it, it had this vaulted ceiling. And this is another one of it, and where the workers coming in, that's an airlock.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's the door to the outside. There's a bathroom to his left, and then a double door into the studio. So there's actually 3 doors between his room and the outside when it's all said and done. It's another one of these soundproof the entire space. You know, he didn't want to be in a little booth. I think there's this commonality among those that come from radio. They don't want to be. Some of them like it. I know Bill Weaver, he likes the booth. He likes to feel like I'm in a booth. Now I'm an actor. Now I'm outside the booth. I'm a producer.
Yeah.
But others like David, they want that feeling of a radio station. Joe Cipriano is the same way. I want to have it all right in front of me. I want to have this, control station right in front of me. And that's what David has. That's a really old photo of his original rack. And he had an LA4 or 3, I can't remember what it was, and a 1070, a 1080, whatever Neve preamp that was, And over the years, his setup has gotten more and more simplified. I keep removing things from his setup because I just want it to be reliable. But so that was the whole gist of this. This was a big job to get that huge space, cavernous room to sound quiet. And he lives in Burbank. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He lives in Toluca Lake, or did, where we have airplanes flying overhead from Burbank International.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to knock that noise level down. It wasn't perfect, but with a little bit of an expander, my secret weapon, we got that room sounding really, really quiet, and it works great.
Do you implement, that looks like a tankless hot water here.
Yeah, I think that was actually part of the HVAC system, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. It gets some cloth selection.
This is not an edited gallery. It's random, but this is some
random.
color swatches for the design.
Oh, nice
that's,
color.
That's what the room looked like before furniture and equipment went in. Yeah, it was all wired for 5.1 surround.
Yeah.
And now where he lives in Camarillo, we kind of replicated this in his new home in Camarillo, and he still has a 5.1 surround system, and it was quite elaborate build out. It took a lot of time, and I went a little overkill on the acoustical panels. I think.
Can you overkill that?
Well, I don't know. We hung 4-inch thick panels on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I think in this use case it was not necessary. I could have gone 2-inch. That's kind of little things that you kind of do a little guessing with these studios, especially when the ceiling is vaulted. It's more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a little harder to figure out how the room's going to sound until you kind of get everything in there. I tend to design studios very practically. I don't think about the perfection of a studio. I think about what is it like to sit and work in this space? How comfortable is it? Is it somewhere you can work in, day out? Do you like to be in the space? All those things go into the design, and then the acoustics kind of comes last, where we just tune it to make sure that right where you're at with that mic, you're not hearing reflections and echoes and resonances and things like that. And that's kind of how I go about it.
Wow. Man, I wish we had more time.
You guys could just go to GeorgeThe.Tech, click on Studio Gallery, and just pour through all these different build projects. There's a ton of them on there. You can just look through. They show intense amounts of detail. So if you're really careful, if you're really observant, you might be able to build your studio just off these photos. How
do you find the trade-off between using thick acoustic panels versus maybe thinner acoustic panels and bass traps in the corner. The office I'm in right now, and I'm not going to swing the camera around, there's too much junk, but I use some, I guess they're 2-inch acoustic panels, and then I bought a kit that was right-sized for my room, and the bass traps came with it. When I put them, I thought, yeah, that did make a difference. That really did. Of course, the carpet made the biggest difference. Putting a desk and pictures on the wall made a difference. Yep. Acoustic panels made a huge difference. But the bass traps, I thought, yeah, it is. The bass is quieter in here now. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, so bass trapping, if we're talking about specifically about a voiceover context, the smaller the room you're in, the more critical the bass trapping is in. Right? So like this is a Studio Bricks Model 1, and it's about 3.5 by 4.5 feet inside. Mm-hmm. It's pretty small. So you're going to have these things called room modes. These are standing waves that are predicated by the exact dimensions of the chamber, right? Whatever the size is, it's going to have these frequencies that you're going to be fighting against. How you decide to deal with those depends on the amount of space you have to work with. If I had my druthers, I'd have 4-inch thick panels over the entire perimeter of that room, but it's going to get really small. So I have a mixture of things. I have bass traps in one corner. I have thicker 4-inch panels behind where I'm standing. Then I have on my sides, I have thinner panels. I have this variety of things so that I'm killing off as many of these different standing waves and resonances without completely getting rid of all the interior usable space. Mm-hmm. Like these little tiny booth spaces are a nightmare acoustically. They're really terrible. They're so bad that if you talk to an acoustician who has a degree and a master's and maybe even a doctorate in acoustics, they'll tell you that you can't use a room that small to record a good sounding voiceover. They literally will tell you the math doesn't work. And that is true. So we have to figure out, we improvise. So yeah, it is sometimes corner bass traps. It is sometimes 4-inch or 2-inch. It just depends on the size of the room and the frequencies that we have to deal with. But generally, the thicker the panel, the lower the frequencies that it can control, So it's space, size, and practical. It's all dependent on the practicality of the space and all that. All that stuff works together.
I want to show you one thing about my room here. You tell me your opinion. Is this thumbs up, thumbs down, not necessary? And that is right above my space.
Oh, no. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of ceiling clouds.
Okay.
Anytime you can hide your acoustics up on the ceiling, always a good idea. I have a 2 by 4 foot big foam piece on my ceiling right over my head. I have a one on the wall above me. And this room is an example of clutter is your friend.
Yes,
right?
It is.
The more cluttered and more stuff that's in there, this shelf over here full of gear, and my closet's full of clothing over here with the door open. So that's absorbing sound. Yeah. I have a futon, right? I have a rug. I've got a drape over here. I've got a panel. Like this room is an amalgamation of pieces, but when you add it all together, you get a great sounding space, So you can start from scratch and design it from the ground up, or you can take existing spaces and just tune them based on the need and the kind of mic you're using and the kind of stuff that you're doing. So I really love that art of it. I know there's a lot of science in acoustics. I have the damn books. I've tried reading them. They're a nightmare. But the reality of treating a space to fit the person's unique needs, and there's a little art of it. There's a little bit of luck and a lot of experience, and that's how I like tuning rooms.
We are talking to George Whittam, and we'll have all the links in the show notes, and we're going to be right back in a minute with a final thought from George after this word. And some of George's clients probably use this. It's the VoxPro, and you can get your VoxPro from Broadcasters General Store. Let's hear from St. John.
Hey, what's happening? St. John here, coming to you from Command Central, and wanted to tell you about the absolute best partner you can have in radio. I'm talking about, boom, Wheatstone's VoxPro. Lots of different audio software out there. Why VoxPro? It's the only software designed to do what we needed to do, which is record, edit, playback in real time. When I say lightning fast, I'm going to show you how fast you can edit stuff up in VoxPro right now. So literally 3 clicks on the controller, mark left, mark right, everything that gets marked, you hit delete, it goes away. It's literally that fast. So we're going to take this part right here.
Caller 9.
Boom. From caller 9 to him saying, I'm ready.
5. Ready for that secret sound.
Boom. All of that stuff, hit delete, it goes away. Here's your edit.
You are tackling secret sound, caller 9.
I'm ready, St. John.
One of the best features of version 7, this is awesome. It's effects macros, and you can literally put a chain of effects together so that instead of having to normalize a phone bit and then use noise reduction on it and EQ it and all that, you can literally build a chain. One button, this one's called call right here. I just click that. All of those processes happen instantaneously. Final thing that I love about VoxPro, and there's so much more to get into, but one of my favorite things, you can load it on a laptop. I've literally done my show from a hotel room in Armenia to the conference room at, this was fun, jury duty. Great thing, no one could tell the difference. VoxPro makes it totally easy. Telling you, if you're looking for the best on-air partner, call my friends at Wheatstone, ask them about VoxPro, and you'll be glad you did.
Of course, you can get your VoxPro, from Broadcasters General Store. Go to the website, bgs.cc, bgs.cc, or do what I do, call them because they love telephones at 352-622-7700. They'll talk to you until you feel comfortable. That's 352-622-7700 for Broadcasters General Store. Thanks a lot for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, George.
That's the third tab it's locked in my browser. Because there are so many products that are broadcast specific that could apply to voiceover that we just don't think of. And now I know about another interesting product to play around with. That's really cool.
Especially if you got to do fast stuff. That VoxPro is really good for
voice actors have to turn stuff around fast. They're doing 30 to 50 auditions a day. They're turning around. Boom. Time is money. You got to be quick. So anything that accelerates that production process is the really competitive voiceover actors are going to use them.
George, my apologies for not warning you more, but I wonder if you can, we're out of time. Can you leave us with a tip that our listeners and viewers can walk away with? And hey, it could be, we've already talked about your website, but, anyway.
Any tips at all? I would say we love gear. All of us do, right? That's why we do radio engineering. That's why we're doing this show. But when it comes down to getting good voiceover audio, I hate to tell you, it's the really boring, non-glamorous stuff that matters. It's knowing how to use your mic, how far away it should be from your mouth, at what angle from your mouth it should be, and then acoustically tuning the space around you. And this is boring stuff, but what this is the audio side of photography, where in photography, it's about lighting, choosing the right lens, and the rest, once you have the right lens, you put it in the right place, you focus that lens, and you light the scene, you nailed it, right? In audio, same thing, except the focus is adjusting the microphone further and closer. The lighting is the acoustics. That is the best thing that's the best analogy I can come up with. People think visually. Audio is harder to understand. If you think of it that way, it might help you. And you start realizing how incredibly critical those little details really are. Most of what I do day to day when I consult folks on Zoom is literally tell them where to put their mic. And when they do that, it's like they bought a brand new mic. They're like, oh my gosh, if I had only known, I wouldn't have had to buy another mic. Well, the mic you already had was perfect. You just didn't know how to use it. So just know how to use your gear, know how to use your mic, and train your ears. Listen to everything you record critically so you know what it's supposed to sound like. Like my good friend Dan Leonard from VOBS says, whistle what it's supposed to sound like. You need to know that so that you can give great production quality.
That sounds good. What good advice. You can find out more of George's advice at GeorgeThe.Tech. Pretty clever. GeorgeThe.Tech. So all things George are there at GeorgeThe.Tech. So George, we'll put links to all that in the show notes and encourage people to come visit you and check out your podcasts as well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for being with us. Hey, thanks a lot to George Whittam. Thanks to all of our sponsors on This Week in Radio Tech. Also, thanks to Suncast for helping produce this show. If you see any mistakes in the show, that was me. If you see anything done right in the show, like lower thirds, that's Suncast. I appreciate you, Suncast. And thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, home of other good podcasts, so check them out. Thanks a lot, Andrew. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.